Good morning, and thanks everyone for joining us. Today we have a very special guest. In fact, when I asked her how she wanted me to introduce her, she said, I don't know, an actress and your friend. And that is what she is. But for those of you that don't know her incredible work, she is very well known for her portrayal of Lady Sif in the Marvel movies and most recently on the television show Blind Spot. She is also an incredible athlete, martial arts, amazing friend, and very funny. So I will, with no further ado, introduce Jaimie.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello,
I'm very
hello.
happy to be talking to you as usual.
Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to think like how we connected with each other. I think we had a mutual friend who connected us.
Yeah,
But then I remember we went on our first date to Craig's.
that's
And,
true. I remember. Yeah.
right. And that's when we really like started to get to know each other. And I was surprised at how like comfortable and immediate, like when you initially meet someone, sometimes it's like these awkward silences or this and that. And we just were like, da 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 da, like right away.
hmm Yeah, it was one of my, I guess, more easier, better little friend dates because I will either talk so much that it's too much, or I'll just be completely quiet. I got
Right, right, right.
like modes. I think I'm just kind of built in extremes. I mean,
Yeah,
know how
yeah,
that works out, but yeah.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. No, it's so true. Like I think sometimes going on friend dates with other women, as an adult is so much more stressful than like just going on a romantic date, a potential romantic date.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it sort of brings you back to childhood where you're like, oh, I hope this person likes me and
Yeah.
love to be friends and all that stuff. Whereas, I mean, nowadays, I think, at least for me in my romantic life, it's kind of like I'll know in the first 5 seconds if
Yes.
I might go to jail for killing the person or just, I'll know right away. But I think with, specifically women, there's just a desire, at least for me, to connect with women and to build a really good, strong friend group of females.
Hmm.
This is something I never had growing up. No,
Hmm.
actually, probably not until I got sober.
Okay. Yeah. And, for me, I don't know how it was for you in sobriety. When I first got into sobriety, I wasn't comfortable with women at all. And so a lot of my friends in early sobriety were men. And then I started to realize like how much I was lacking in not having these female friendships, but how incredibly hard it was to make them. And now that I have my core group, some of which is your core group, I can't even imagine not having my ladies.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up with a house full of brothers,
Yeah. What do you
boys,
have,
and
four brothers or?
yes, four
Okay.
brothers. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I was always really uncomfortable around women. I think because I was such a tomboy. I never even wore makeup in school ever. Probably didn't even really brush my hair. A lot of times I'd wear my brother's Metallica t-shirts with some Jinkos. That dates.
Mhm.
But I didn't really know how to be around girls. I found them very intimidating, and I always felt strangely like less than. So I thought, oh, I'll just be one of the boys. I was on my high school wrestling team. I like that worked for me for a long time. And then as I got older, I'd have like a handful of friends that were women that, I'd occasionally see. And of course my work colleagues. But
Mhm.
as for, really, really, really intimate, deep relationships with women, I didn't have that until I got sober. And now it's just uh, I think I've found that I've really come open and I've really been able to bloom in sobriety in a way that I never would have been able to if I had not gotten sober.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let me ask you some questions in the recovery area.
Okay.
Because that's what we try to focus on. But it's also really important to bring in the rest of the rest of your life because everything is such a balance. But for you, like, how would you describe, and I know you read my book, which is why I'm asking you this question, is how would you describe the difference between first becoming abstinent, then really what sobriety was and is about, and what the difference of soulbriety is to you?
Well, I do remember when I first, I guess, got dry. I would call it dry. I had no idea really what sobriety was. I just thought, oh, I cannot drink alcohol again, ever. It was a decision that kind of hit me. I was in the hospital and I was basically going to die. I don't think many people know that, but it just hit me. I just was like, wow, I have a problem with alcohol. It's just something that, my life didn't blow up. I didn't, lose friends or family or a job or my finances or anything. So it really, I had hidden that from myself. Like it was somebody else's problem, not mine. Um, and once that, I literally had that moment in the hospital, I was like, I can't ever drink again. I can't do that. And so when I got out, I was white knuckling it for a while, that term that we use when, basically you have no support behind you, but you're just really trying to stay away from the thing that is really had become the most important thing in your life. And once I got myself into a 12-step program, I started learning a lot more about what real sobriety was, because I thought, okay, it's really just alcohol. I just got to stay away from. And really and truly, that was a symptom. It really had a lot to do with up here, like the way I think, the way I process information, the way I respond to outside events, like all that kind of stuff. And so once I had started doing the work in this 12-step program, I really, and started becoming friends with other people in the program and learning from them, it's become, I would say, like, I've noticed that my problem surrounding alcoholism, or just alcoholism for me, it was a serious spiritual malady. Like
Mhm.
that was what it was. It was like since I've been sober, I've been able to build this foundation, which ties into your book really about, the somewhat like finding the true essence of who you are and being okay with that, and taking time to respond to things, and not being so reactionary to stuff, like reactive to stuff. And I think, uh, I think also something that, like, I kept feeling when I was reading your book the first time was acceptance. That was literally the root cause of a lot of problems, still is, just my lack of acceptance of what is. And so, I've found that in sobriety, I can really look at what is, accept it, then make a motion to change whatever it is, or work towards a change.
Yes. Yes.
Because that, like, feeling of lack of acceptance for me was me trying to control everything that really was not in my control, and what a waste of time.
Mhm.
And because I would do that and I would struggle so much, I would cover that pain or misery with booze. Like I couldn't even do laundry without having a couple shots of bourbon. I mean, it's
Mhm.
like I could not do my life. Like everything seemed so unmanageable and so intense all the time. Um, and really what I've found since I've been sober is I've been able to ground myself with the
Mhm.
tools of the program and other people in the program. That's made a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to everything you said. I think it's so important, and really why I really wanted to do a few of these interviews during these last 2 months was because in the work that I do, when I hear clients refer to, well, I know so and so sober and I saw them do this. And, because not everyone feels comfortable walking into a 12-step meeting or even talking about their own mental health or their sobriety or their lack of. And really hearing other people share not their whole drunkalogs of what happened, but what their life is like now. And that it wasn't always like we weren't always a vision for you. Like we had that same pain and that same fear and that same anxiety and that same lack of control and wanting control, and that moment where something is deeply wrong and you don't know what to do about it. And I talk about that a lot, and how I knew something was very, very wrong with me, but I couldn't stop using drugs and alcohol. And I didn't even know it was an option. Like literally didn't occur to me that that was an option, even though people were like, maybe you should stop drinking. Maybe you should stop, carrying Coke in your bag like it's gum. Like maybe you should do this, that, and the other thing. And it's so hard to like reconcile that. And so, I know you're a supporter of mental health awareness and all of that. And I think it's just so important that we speak about our stories and that we shed light on it, as it's not a scary, stigmatizing, terrible thing. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think it's the most courageous thing that we could do for ourselves.
Yeah. And I do think, once you know something, you can't unknow it. And that's what I found, since I've gotten sober, I can't unknow the things that I've learned. And what
Mm-hmm.
the program's taught to me, basically it's given me a way to process things where I'm not going to drink. I'm actually going to sit down and do a little bit of work around whatever it is, talk about it, like get it out, talk about it. That was something I never did. I never talked about any pain, anything. I mean, I would be at
Yeah.
work, I would dislocate my shoulder, couple shots of bourbon, no problem. Like that is crazy. That is unmanageable. But yet if my scarf got caught on the door or something, I would lose my mind. Like it was
Right.
I could, nothing was right sized. Like my wires were crossed. It was
Right.
just a mess. And then, since I've been sober, I've been able to unravel all of that and put
Yep.
it where it belongs. And it's not easy all the time. I mean, I think that's something that when I first got sober, I remember hearing people talk about their stories and go, oh, so everything gets peachy keen, like nothing bad ever happens and everybody's fine. And oh, his life is going to be so easy. And it's not necessarily easier, but it's better. And that's something that I have to remember, is that life is 100% better the way I'm living my life now than the way I was, even though situations and circumstances are actually pretty crappy at the moment. So for me, so I look at that and go, well, at least I'm here, because I definitely would not have continued to exist on this planet if I continued to drink the way I was back then. Um,
Yeah.
so it's good. I think it's important. This is the thing that I felt when I was reading your book, and like your level of what we call rigorous honesty is just off the charts amazing, and it gives me like permission and helps me feel safe enough to do the same. And that's
Mhm.
the thing, you lead by example, but you're so honest that it's like, okay, this is, how intense and crazy it was, but this is how it is now. It's still sometimes difficult, but I'm able to handle it, and so I love that kind of truth rather than just all the positive stories all the time.
Yep.
It really has helped me listen to people, you know going through a lot of real stuff, like heavy stuff,
Mhm.
and staying sober.
Mhm.
It's incredible what people can go through and not give up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were just talking before we went live, and well, we're not live, but before we went on,
Yeah.
and I was saying how the last 6 months have been for me a series of losing people and my dog that I love, and going through intense grief in a 6 month period. And also having to work and show up and be there for my family and celebrate, other things, and with this deep pain at this all at the same time. And for me now, you know, almost 22 years in, it's this idea that if I look at everything through the lens of sobriety, like if I wasn't sober, I couldn't have sat in that hospital room. I couldn't have done this. I couldn't have walked through that. But I know, because I did something that was really, really, really hard, and then learned how to live a life that I could manage, like you were saying, that I can do hard things now and also simultaneously enjoy life while I'm grieving. And
Yeah.
that is a big lesson, because when I was using, I had this immediate escape, but I wasn't really managing anything, nor was I enjoying anything, is the flip
Mhm.
side. So even though life gets hard now, and we have these, dark nights of the soul, as I call them, we also at the same time can experience periods of joy. And that's right. That's everything.
Yeah. And I grew up thinking you couldn't feel more than one thing at a time, which
Yep.
is bizarre because I'm an actor and it's literally my job to feel multiple things at a time, or at least portray them. And I realized, I can be going through something pretty dire, and at the same time, if a friend calls and tells me something positive going on in their life, or just calls to say hi, or sends a funny picture, I can also have immense joy in that moment, while also, so it's like right sizing your response to the things that are going on in your life. It's like we all have lots of things all at once happening. So it makes sense to me to go, oh, I can feel an enormous amount of gratitude and still be really ticked off that X, Y, and Z didn't happen or something like that. And I think that's normal. Like that
Yeah,
is how I should
that's
say.
how we're supposed to do it. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about going through, whatever it is that you're going through, but what are some things, what are some tools, what are some hobbies that you turn to so that you can, you know, fill your soul back up and care for your soul when you are having a downtime in another area in your life?
Well, I definitely learned quite a few tools. Sometimes I just happen to forget them in the moment, and I have to be like, wait a second. Pausing when agitated, biggest one for me. If I can pause and take a breath, I get an answer. Like
Mhm.
I'll receive an answer to whatever it is that I need an answer to at the time. But exercise has helped me a lot. That
Yeah.
was not, I always liked exercising, but it was really more of, I gotta stay healthy, I gotta stay fit, stuff like that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna go in and see how much I can lift today and like
Mhm.
really feel strong in my body for me so that I feel healthy and good. Not it's a little less now about aesthetics for me. Um, so that's helped me a lot. So again, like, move a muscle, change a thought. I get in that gym, I can't think of anything else except for the 100 pounds I'm trying to bench. Otherwise, I'm gonna
I'm
crush.
so by the way, I'm so impressed with the amount that you are benching and what you are doing. I mean, you always have that like air about you of being, athletic, but like recently you've just turned it up a notch.
I just thought, what is in my control right now? Like, what can I do that will also be beneficial to me and like really
Yeah.
help me? And that's one of them. And I've been keeping not, and I don't want to do it all the time, but I do. I keep myself a good schedule because, again, I think structure for somebody like me is really important. I can bounce all over the place, and having some form of a routine is really helpful, I found.
Mhm.
So I'd say exercise is definitely one. I do really enjoy volunteering. So I'll do things like I'll do some work with a charity I'm an ambassador to called Self Help Africa, and I'll also there's a place in New York called the Bowery Mission, and a lot of times you can sign up online. It's so easy to
Mhm.
do that, and anytime I'm feeling out of sorts or just really in a misery spiral or whatever it is, I will sign up and go serve food there or clean or something because for
I love
me, it's just, yeah, I've always wanted to help as many people as possible
Yeah.
because ever since I was a kid, it just makes me feel good. Like I literally do it. It's kind of like a selfish or self-centered situation here, but it really does. Like if I go do that, I leave that place feeling like that was awesome. I connected with a lot of different people, and I was able to I was able to help somehow, whether it's like cleaning the floors or whatever it is. Um, so I'll do that, and I'll put that in place sometimes weekly if I can.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, it's not, people think it's selfish because it does make us feel so good, but it's the connections, the
yeah,
connecting with other people that makes us feel good. So if we have the awareness of like, oh, that's what I need in order to feel good, and we're giving it away at the same time because we're showing up so present and with an open arms of like, let's connect. I don't, regardless of who you are, where you are, what your circumstances are right now, like I'm right here right now for you.
yeah.
That is an incredible gift to be able to give.
Yeah. And it helps with, idle time because for me, I can go through several years of working every day for crazy hours a day, and then like quite a few months or a year without anything. And those two extremes are for me not beneficial, but it is the
Yeah,
nature of what I do. So I have to take extra steps to make sure that I feel grounded and mentally well in both extremes. And one of those things is being of service. And that's something I've learned, through this 12-step program. But I definitely, um, and I know that I've seen a lot of people get sober and clean, but then perhaps their addiction manifests in other things that they're doing, whether it's working out too much or overeating or whatever it is. So I've been careful to notice when that's happening. And so
yes.
far, it hasn't really happened with exercising. I mean, I'm happy when I leave.
Yeah.
I was trained, I was lifting 4 days a week. And for me, that's, I don't need to be doing that. So I do like three, and then I'll do something outdoors on a Saturday instead. But
Right.
I try to keep that in check. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's smart. I know. There's so many things over the years where all of a sudden I'm like, am I doing that addictively right now? I feel like, maybe I should
Yeah.
dial that back. And it can be anything. It can be
Oh, service.
anything.
Oh, yeah. It's anything to help you avoid what's maybe happening at the moment.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, when
Yeah.
did I pick up this hobby? This isn't even a hobby. This is now an addiction.
hmm I
And
always say too much of anything is too much, no matter what it is.
exactly, exactly. I'm gonna give up sugar again, which for me is I'm either all in eating tons of sugar,
hmm
like ice cream for dinner, or I can't have any sugar. Like I
Yeah.
can't have one cookie, I can't have one, M&M, like that I can't have just a handful, like no.
Yeah.
So it's full on or full out. So I think
Mhm.
I got in 6 months ago when things were going a little awry. And I literally had this like yesterday moment where I was like, are you done? You're done.
Yeah.
So that's where
I'd
I am
say
on sugar.
that's my thing. I didn't really know that about myself for a while. I mean, in the beginning, when you get sober, I think back when I got sober, I was eating, I think, 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's a day. It was weird.
Right.
And
But when
it,
I got sober, I was eating a pound. This is disgusting. A pound of chocolate covered gummy bears that I would have to go out. I was an agent at the time, and I would have to go out during lunch and restock when there was like a little dessertery candy store, and I would have to restock. I'm not kidding you, a bag this big
oh, I
of chocolate
believe it.
covered gummy bears. Like gross.
Yeah.
I needed it.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, and it does, like, I think a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm going to gain so much weight," and it's like, the alternative is death. So I mean, I think,
Exactly. Just
like,
do what you got to do.
do what you got to do. It dropped off at some point. I just realized I wasn't doing it anymore. I was like, "Oh."
Right.
And I wasn't a huge dessert person before I got sober. And then I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, fancy that. Look at that. Like, everything looks good."
Right.
And so I do have to watch it sometimes, to the point where I do need to put parameters, like some boundaries around my sugar intake, because I will compulsively and very quickly eat a bunch of like chocolate, and we're talking not,
Yes.
I'm talking about like an entire bag of chocolate chips in one sitting, and I will feel like awful, like
Yes.
physically awful. And then I used to really beat myself up, and there's this friend of mine that will say, "Don't damn yourself twice." So if you do
Hmm.
something and then you beat yourself up about it, that's
Hmm.
what's the point, So I'll usually laugh and be like, "Oh, oops," and I'll let
Exactly.
me have some water. Let me like write down maybe why I'm feeling this way, where I want to
Exactly.
numb out or whatever it is. And then I take a look at that. But that's not every day. I mean, sometimes I just eat it and I'm like, "Oh, well," and I don't take a look at what's,
Exactly.
and that's
Exactly.
human. So
Exactly. And I think that's important. Going back to our why we're doing something will
mhm,
always lead us back to that core issue. And then we can fix it, because the reaching for something outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel better, whatever that is, that's
mhm.
just a symptom that we're missing something in here.
Yeah,
And we always have to just go back to, okay, well, what's happening in my inner world? Where where
yeah.
where are we right now?
Yeah. And I'll usually know it'll be around the time that I would drink. So it'd be like, early evening, it'll happen, or I'll get home from like a really long day and I'm super exhausted. And it's the first thing I think of. I'm like, let me put on a movie. I'm gonna lay on the couch and eat all this garbage. I
Mhm.
literally look forward to it like I used to look forward to getting home and drinking a bottle or
Right,
two of bourbon. So it was just
right.
like I'm aware that that is that's my addiction or my alcoholism manifesting itself in a, you know, in a very tasty way. But I've noticed that about myself. And so I've been, you know, it's really hard to ask for help. I've found that somebody like me specifically, I'm always, um, you know, I was always the person everybody came to for help, and I like being that person. I'm very happy to do that for people, and um, but it was hard for me to, like, I had to admit to myself that I was like, I can't stop drinking, and I didn't understand why. I like would pour myself a giant bourbon straight and be like, I don't want this. Like I would literally look at it out loud by myself in my apartment, look at it and say, I don't want this. And I could not have it. It was awful being a slave to something like that. Um,
Yes.
and, you know, I think back in 2013, I had tried to stop, and I didn't realize that, like, you know, a lot of these 12-step programs are, I thought you had to be like a, you know, Bible reading Christian to go to these things, because a lot of times, you know, they would meet in churches and things. And then I realized, like, oh, it's because a lot of times that's free, or like the rent is
Exactly.
very low,
Exactly.
and it has nothing to do with religion. It's more spiritual. So I read a book, like, I think it, I was able to stop drinking for 3 weeks. I read Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Drinking, and it
Yeah.
worked for 3 weeks.
Yeah. For 3 weeks.
I think the thing that was missing was the community. Like,
Right.
I know if I'm a very adaptable person, so if I'm around a bunch of people that are partying or drinking a lot, it's makes it a lot harder for me to stay sober, especially
Yep.
up here. And so I have to, it's my responsibility to get myself around like-minded people that know what this feels like.
Yep.
Because I know I've talked to people that have a relative that's struggling with alcoholism and addiction issues, and they're like, I just don't understand why, like, why can't he just stop, or why can't she just do this? And it's like, I understand you can't understand, because
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, why couldn't I just stop, you know?
Exactly.
But it's just, it's a blinding force. It is a really tricky thing, because I find that I'm a pretty intelligent woman. I usually have all my ducks in a row and all that stuff, and I could not figure out how to stop
Yep.
until I went, you know, into a 12-step program, and I started learning why I couldn't do it myself.
Exactly.
And then I thought, yeah, and then I thought, biologically we're tribe animals. I'm like, what's so wrong with asking somebody for help? I know when somebody asks me for help, I feel good that I can help them with something, right? It's
Exactly.
like, it's they're giving me an opportunity to show up and feel good about myself. Like, let me, like, I don't know, maybe I could do that for somebody else and learn something. But yeah.
Yeah. I always say it's so important, you know, it's so important who we go to. We can't, we definitely have to like pick and choose, and so it's not about you can't ask for help, but just be really mindful and intuitive about who's going to have the bandwidth and the space
Yeah.
to let you be vulnerable and can hold that for you without judging you.
And
So
won't tell you what you want to hear. That's like the,
won't tell you what you want to hear, won't judge you, but will come to you, back to you with some sort of solution. Because that's essentially what we're looking for. We're like, I can't stop doing this. I don't know what to do. And I tell families a lot of times that want to help their loved one or their friend that, you know, stop going to them with, you know, we really notice that you have a problem. Like they're very aware that they have a problem.
Mhm.
They know that what's going on for them is not okay and they're not happy about it. What they don't know is how to fix it.
Right.
And so show up with a phone number, show up with a police, show up with a person they can call. Something of that nature is always going to be so much more effective. And yeah, I think asking for help with the right people. I know for me, I don't know if you have this, but I have like now a board of directors that I go to with those really tough questions, or
Yeah.
when I know that I really, really want to do this, but there's that little voice going, this is probably the better way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, and then I go to my board and I'm like, what do you think? And my board changes a little bit over time, but not much. And
Mhm.
but I think it's important to know who those people are and for which purpose.
Yes, I agree with you. And that's something you learn by just, you know, trial and error, you know.
Exactly.
I was always taught to search for what you want. Like if you know, like what do you want to be? What do you want to become? Like search for those people that have that quality that you really want to have yourself, and ask them how they are
How
staying
they
healthy
did it.
over and all that stuff and how they did it. And I've got yeah, I'm very lucky. I have quite a few women in my life I can talk to, and also some men as well. And
Mhm.
it's just I it's the thing that I believe my entire life I was missing, was like just a real true connection with another human being.
Yeah.
Meaning like, you know, I can say and talk about my deepest fears and my, you know, deepest worries, my worst behaviors, all that stuff. And the person will go, oh yeah, me too. And you're
Mhm.
just like, oh, I'm not terminally unique. Like, oh, okay. So you,
Right.
so, okay. And then it just cuts it in half. And it's just like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm human. Like no one's
Yeah.
perfect. We're all going to struggle with stuff. And that's how we learn, you know, we make mistakes. And if you don't think you're making any mistakes, like that's a bummer, you know. I'm glad I make mistakes, because that's like literally
Yeah.
the only way I really truly get to like the my essence, and get to tap into that. And my mistakes keep me humble. That's like, you know, it's good. It's good to be humble. I know sometimes I'll walk down the street and I'll have my earphones on. I'm listening to like some rock song, and
Yeah.
I'll just be feeling really good and I'll trip.
Right. Right.
And every time I laugh, because I'm like, that's right. I gotta stay humble. Like it's just
Yeah.
funny. It makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I go, that's right. That's
I la
yeah.
I mean, I laugh. I love watching people trip, including myself. Tripping to me, like literally just on the street, like a little fumble. Like
Yeah.
I find that so hysterical, and I just get such a kick out of that, mostly when it's me. And
Yeah.
I'm like the biggest klutz. So I mean, I know you've like broken and torn like every aspect of you. You do your own stunts, like your whole thing. But I am just a like, I'll break my foot walking down the street, you know?
Yeah, I do
I
believe.
mean, I had like a lot of hardware put into this elbow and two surgeries, and all I did was fall off a stage that was this high,
But
you
that's
know,
how it
and,
I
you
mean,
know,
that's how it happens.
sober, by the way,
Yeah.
sober.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how I break all my things. I don't know what kind of stunts I could possibly do, but I can barely
Oh.
walk down the street without getting injured.
You sound like a natural to me. I mean,
Yeah.
you recover well.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so
That's
yeah.
true. Well, this was amazing. Thank you for being so vulnerable, so humble. And I just think you're an incredible source of light and gift. And I think you're going to help a lot of people who go, wow, like I didn't know. And I can probably now too.
Thank you. Thanks. That's my hope. It's
Yeah,
tough out there, and there's help. So if you need help, like just find that like ounce of courage you have in you, and use it. Ask for help.
exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was nice to see you.
It was nice to see you.